3:30 now. Welcome to our first ever webinar series on finding opportunities in data. We're excited that you guys are here with us today. We have a tool that we think will be of high interest to all of you. With me, I have Heather Elias. Hello. John Davis. Hello. And myself, Javier Garcia, all from Leadership Support Services here at Tulare County Office of Ed. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. We have about 30 minutes. If we wrap up early, then we'll just kind of roll with that. But to give you guys a little bit of background, the data division at Leadership Support Services here at Tulare County Office of Ed is relatively new, and this is one of the first tools that we've had a chance to kind of get up off the ground and share with you all. A few months back, Heather and I both had the opportunity to attend a conference up in Sacramento where she met a woman by the name of Karen from Santa Ana, who had built essentially this 5x5 Explorer for her own district. Heather shared it with me immediately and just said, there's a lot of opportunity here. We think this might be useful to our sites and districts. And so we've kind of embarked on this journey to redeploy that tool for all the schools in our county and all the districts in our county. So you're going to see two very similar tools, but one specifically for the sites, the other one is specifically for districts. Hopefully some of you guys have had a chance to explore that some, but we hope that this is just the first in a number of offerings that we have to share with you guys. And we intend on making this webinar series an ongoing thing, beginning of every month. First Monday of every month, I think, is kind of our goal. We hope to share a new tool, a new insight, something that you might be able to use to tool around with, play around with, and maybe get some insights into the data that's being generated at your sites and districts. In the chat box, I've gone ahead and added a link to our Tableau visualizer. We have those two tools, the district and the site 5x5. And additionally, if you guys are interested in just having more frequent updates from the data team here, there's a link there to somewhere where you can get added to a listserv. So hopefully you'll consider signing up for that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you guys can get a chance to take a look at the tool, and we'll kind of dive right in. Before I go any further, does anybody have any questions for us? All right. That said, take my face off of the screen. Now, hopefully you guys are all able to see our TCOE data visualization gallery, and you can see that there are two tools there. The blue one is for schools. You can see the little for schools language there at the top. The other one is for districts. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Heather to kind of take us through a little bit of a quick tour of how this thing works.
All right. So you can all feel free to just use the link and click around if you want to explore on your own, or you can watch the shared screen and I will take you on a little tour of what this does. So as Javier said, we have a tool that is just for schools and another that is just for districts, and that's just because of the way that the 5x5 works. It didn't really work to put them all together onto one. So first option is you need to select, do you want to look at the school or the district tool? For the purpose of this, I'm just going to go ahead and look at the district tool. So that takes you to this page, which is the landing page. It's just general instructions. The tool is actually pretty simple to use, but this is just here for your general reference. If you have any questions, you can always refer back to this tab that says instructions, and it'll give you some insight on what you're seeing. Across the top, there are tabs where you can select which indicator you want to explore. They're divided up the way that the 5x5 is divided, with elementary and unified being grouped for the academic indicators, and then split up across suspension. And then there's obviously absenteeism and grad rate and CCI at the end. So to walk you through this, I am going to just start with ELA. And so this is what you will see on any of these tabs that you open. They will look the same, but they will be referring to a different indicator. On the left side, this is your current information. On the right side is the what if scenario that I will get into in a second. So you're going to want to start by selecting a district, and I am going to start with Dinuba. And next you will select a student group. I'm just going to leave it on all students just because it's a simpler view, but you can select any student group you want. It'll change the information to correspond to that group. So we select all students. This then gives you a text box down below that shows you what your dashboard looked like the last year, how many students took the test, what the distance from standard was, and then what things look like this year. Again, how many students took the test, what the distance from standard was. And then down below, you get your placement on the 5x5. In this case, Dinuba was in yellow. The status was -17, so 17 points away from standard. And the change was 3 points from last year. The really awesome thing about this tool that really got me excited and made me want to build this for our leaders was this part on the right where you can explore a change value. So you can plug in any number that you want to explore. I like to start with 0 just to see, like, if nothing changed between this year and next year, what would that do? So in this instance, it would move Dinuba from yellow down to orange, which indicates some movement needs to happen because at the moment they're sort of right on the cusp. So in order to maintain that, progress is going to need to be made. And if we put in maybe an increase in 10 points from standard. Again, they're still in the yellow, but they're a lot closer to being green. So you can play around with this, plug in any kind of number that you want, see where it gets you. Think about, what have we been able to accomplish in the past, a movement of 3 points. So would we be able to accomplish a movement of 15 points in 1 year? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe that's too ambitious. Maybe we say next year we'll move by 3 points again. Again, we're still on the cusp, but at least we didn't go down. So you can play with these numbers as much as you want and see where it gets you. And I just want to bring a few things to your attention that you might see as you play with this. If we go to African American, you'll notice that there is no point plotted on the 5x5, and that's because the student group is too small to get a color on the 5x5. And they were too small last year and too small this year, so there is no change value to plot. If we look at a group like 2 or more races, everything just kind of gets wiped out. And that is because this student group does not exist at this site, and it didn't last year either. So again, there's just no information to input, so it wipes everything off. So in case you see that, it's not a glitch, it just means that this student group is not at this site. And then another interesting feature, if I go to American Indian, this student group is actually too small to get a color on the 5x5, but with this tool, because there is past information and present information, there's enough to plot a change value. So it actually does give you a color on the 5x5, letting you know that if this group was large enough, they would have been in the green. So again, that only happens in some instances. It depends on if there's enough information for this tool to plot a value, but in some instances with a small student group, you will see where they could have been, which is pretty valuable. And next I wanted to show you one of the other indicators that gets a little more detailed. This is chronic absenteeism. I'm going to pull up Buena Vista. So Buena Vista is currently in the red for absenteeism. On this particular indicator, it asks you to estimate the enrollment for the group. And I find that the best way to do that is to look at the enrollment for the previous years, and it can give you a good idea of what your enrollment might be next year. For this, I'm just gonna enter the same enrollment. And also for absenteeism and suspension, what we want to see is actually negative numbers. When you plug in a negative number, that means that we're having forward motion. So I'm going to say we are going to decrease by 4% next year. So if we decrease by just 4%, that takes us from red all the way up to green. And the great thing about this particular indicator is it translates it into an actual number of students instead of just a percentage. So this year, there were 30 unique students who were chronically absent. Next year, if we actually achieved this change, that would translate into 21 students. So with just a difference of 9 students, from 30 to 21, you can move from red to green. So all that to say, this tool can really help you to make some informed choices and some informed decision making, because instead of just throwing a number out there into the void, you can actually plug it in here and see what it would do and where it would place you, how many students that would mean, how many points that would mean, not just percentages that might be a little more nebulous and hard to understand. So we hope that you will all use this, play with it. Let us know what you like about it, if there's anything wrong with it. I've worked really hard to put these together repeatedly. And we're really excited to finally be able to show it to you all, and hope that you can use it. And I'm going to turn it over to John, who can can speak to how it can be practically put to use.
As we know, the LCAP has processes three distinct but related functions: comprehensive strategic planning, meaningful stakeholder engagement, and accountability and compliance. And it seems like the 5x5 Explorer really can have an impact in all three of these areas. I'm looking specifically at the instructions, which we know carry the full weight of the law and LCAP development. And some of the pieces that I pulled out that seem very connected. One is that at its most basic, the adopted LCAP should attempt to distill not just what the LEA is doing, but also allow stakeholders to understand why and whether those strategies are leading to improved opportunities and outcomes for students. And that can be kind of nebulous. That can be a little hard to figure out exactly if that's the case, and even more difficult at times to explain to stakeholders why certain decisions are being made. But with the 5x5 Explorer, it seems like it really has the promise to be able to help us to have a better understanding about how our actions might specifically lead to certain outcomes, and then also how we might explain that to stakeholders. Specifically in the area of measuring and reporting results, the instructions for the LCAP say, for each LCAP year, identify the metric that LEAs will use to track progress toward the expected outcomes. LEAs are encouraged to identify metrics for specific student groups, as appropriate, including expected outcomes that would reflect narrowing any existing performance gaps. So clearly with the examples that Heather was showing us, the opportunity to really make that tangible and to come up with some very tangible goals, the 5x5 Explorer lends itself to those kinds of opportunities. In the LCAP template itself, the most obvious place where the Explorer would have immediate benefit would be under goals and actions. There's the measuring and reporting section, measuring and reporting results. And there's the requirement to have a baseline, which the 5x5 Explorer can support. But then also the what if scenario is very well aligned to desired outcome. In the LCAP measuring and reporting, there's a requirement to have along with the baseline, the desired outcome for 22-23 school year, and to use the 5x5 Explorer for that kind of to get that specificity of projection seems like it would really be beneficial and help very, very much with the strategic component of developing the LCAP. Also, when you're looking at actions and you're looking to develop actions from the goals, again, coming back to the example of the chronic absenteeism, where you can break it down to individual actual students, the number of students that you would actually need to work with to be able to see the kind of growth in particular areas, maybe addressing an equity gap as well. You can start to really refine down your actions in a way that would be very manageable and measurable and tangible, and with the 5x5 Explorer supporting and helping that. I also think the 5x5 Explorer can benefit in the goal analysis section, which we won't be doing this year with the LCAP, but next year we'll start the goal analysis section. And in one of the prompts, it says, a description of any changes made to the planned goals, metrics, desired outcomes, or actions for the coming year that result from reflections and prior practice. So, as we know, the LCAP is a conversation, and as that conversation might shift and change, and also as some of the information we're getting might change, being able to make adaptations and then justify those adaptations would be really helped along with the 5x5 Explorer. Also, in the increased and improved services for foster youth, English learners, and low-income students in the LCAP template, specifically, there's a prompt that says, for each action being provided to an entire school or across the entire school district or county office of ed, an explanation of how the needs of foster youth, English learners, and low-income students were considered first, and how these actions are effective in meeting the goals for these students. Well, in a conversation with stakeholders, using the 5x5 Explorer to be able to show how actions might specifically benefit certain groups of students, English learners, foster youth, and low-income students, that certainly can help the conversation, and then the reporting requirement for the increased and improved services with the 5x5 Explorer. The last area I want to mention is with stakeholder engagement. There's a prompt there specifically saying a summary of the stakeholder process and how the stakeholder engagement was considered before finalizing the LCAP. There's been a lot of emphasis in the redevelopment of the LCAP to make sure that the language that we're using and how we're explaining things makes sense to all stakeholders, whether it's somebody who has a big education background or it's a mom and dad who are just trying to make sure their child gets the very best education that they can get. And the 5x5 Explorer takes pretty complex information and distills it down into this manageable and very understandable format. So in conversations with stakeholders, parent meetings or community meetings, using the 5x5 Explorer, not just to explain decisions, but to really bring our community into the conversation as well. And for them to be able to understand how we're looking at this and to get our stakeholders' input on things that they might see and suggestions that they might make and actions that they might suggest also that would help to improve to get the kinds of outcomes that we can project with the 5x5 Explorer seem really would be well supported by this particular tool. I want to mention, along with the LCAP, the 5x5 Explorer, I think, can also be used under the topic of accountability and compliance to if a district wanted to calculate differentiated assistance eligibility projections into coming years as well. You could use the 5x5 Explorer to see how would things need to change, or how might this, conditions change that would affect whether or not a district would be eligible for DA in the coming year or years after that.
Thank you, John. So that is the 5x5 Explorer. We appreciate John taking the time to come and kind of share the ways in which he sees it kind of connecting to LCAP development, DA, school plan, goal setting, and hopefully you guys will share with us ways in which you guys find it useful to you. And please do keep an eye on this page. We do intend on adding more tools as we build them out. And as far as this webinar series is concerned, our intention is to keep it short, give you guys things that we think will be useful to you. We hope that you guys find the 5x5 Explorer useful. And in the coming months, we hope to share things that we think are useful from the dashboard technical guide, different tools that we kind of have planned to develop. And additionally, just to kind of plug something else that is kind of in the works at the moment, Tulare County Office of Ed has recently become the 10th district, joining on the core dashboard. There will be more information forthcoming if you haven't heard from us sharing that already, but we're starting to reach out to districts to partner and get their data up on the dashboard. So please be on the lookout. We'll be sharing more information there as well. I will kind of take a moment. I saw a little indicator. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was. If you do have questions, we'll take a minute to answer any of those. But if there are none, please do consider signing up for our listserv. I'll make sure that that's in the chat box, and hopefully you find this useful. Let us know how you end up using it.
And please bookmark this page, because we do intend to build it out and add more things, and we'll try to push those out through email as we develop them, and then also showcase them here on our first Monday of the month webinars.
All right, so there is one question in the chat box. If folks get stuck or have questions with the tool, where can they get help? So I think if the instructions on the little front page aren't enough to get them through, they can either reach out to Heather or myself. I'll go ahead and type our email addresses in the chat box if you guys want to get a hold of us. But they're pretty easy. It's javier.garcia@tco.org and heather.lias@tco.org.
And if you have any suggestions for things that you would like us to maybe try and put together for you, please feel free to reach out, because we are here to serve you. We don't want to just assume what you need. So please let us know if you have a need. We would love to try and help fulfill it.
Okay, and there is another question about duplicate data points. I'll have Heather kind of take a look, and I'll kind of give you a little insight into some of the things we had to work through as we were kind of debugging some of the things that happened on the back end. We had to try to break it a couple of times, just because there was a couple of sites that, there's a couple of places that have the same school name. That tended to be one major issue.
Yeah.
I think Heather was cursing the names of the presidents. Because if somebody has a Lincoln school and somebody else has a Lincoln school, there was like weird things that would happen. So we try to differentiate those. I'll see if we can figure out what that specific.
I'll look into this thing with Porterville. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously there's only one Porterville Unified, so I'll have to dig into that question a little bit more and get it fixed. I've had to take this thing down and put it back up several times as I've tweaked things and refined things. So you might, I hope that you would not come here and find that the page is empty, but if you do, that's why I'm working on getting back up.
Yeah.
So I'll work on fixing this. And if you find any other issues, any other errors that need to be corrected, please feel free to let me know. I want to make this as accurate as possible. So, and I can't look at every district and every student group and every possible scenario. So please, if you find something that's wrong, let me know so I can correct it.
All right. And for the person who asked that question, if you don't mind, like maybe just putting your email in the as a private chat message, and we'll
Yes.
try to reach back out to you.
I'll let you know when it's corrected.
Yeah. But if there's no other questions, please have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. And thank you guys for being with us. We will send out this recording, I think, to you and everybody else that is on the listserv. So if you have folks that you think might benefit from watching this, please do share this with them. And thank you for being with us.